senses, he would say, this is a bent stick. Or railroad tracks appear to us by way of our senses as though they touch in the distance. So if we went just by our senses, we would say, here are two tracks that meet about a half mile down the road there. But of course, we've discovered that those claims were wrong, and we were in fact mistaken. The ore was not bent in the water. The tracks didn't meet. We went down, and it turned out that they kept going parallelly, and that sort of thing. Again, we have claimed to have moral knowledge, or people have claimed to have religious knowledge, and it's turned out later that we were mistaken. So the argument is, look, haven't you been mistaken when it comes to your claims before? How about your sensory claims? Well, yeah, I've been mistaken. How about claims from memory? Have you ever made any claims that were based on your memories where you were mistaken? Yeah, more so even as I approach, that 50 thing. Yeah, I have. Well, then, how do you know you're not mistaken now? Haven't you been mistaken before? How do you know you're not mistaken now? This is the skeptical argument from the fact of error. Now, this is not a good argument, and I think it should be clear why it's not a good argument. There's at least on the surface of it, a better argument. But what strikes you as wrong with this argument? Does anything come to you initially about what would be wrong with an argument of this sort? Yeah.
How can we ever be sure of anything?
Okay, but you see, that would be the conclusion the skeptic would want you to draw. So if you raise that would, I think he'd say, yeah, bless your heart. I'm not sure that would work. That's a good shot, though.
How does he know that he's been wrong in the past?
Well, I think that's a little bit closer to home. Because you see, this argument is the argument from the fact of error. And the claim is made that we have, in fact, been mistaken. And so if you ask the skeptic, well, can you give me an example of where we've been mistaken? And he says such and such. Now notice carefully that when we know things, there are what we might call classes of things that we know. And they all kind of look alike. For example, we all have knowledge by our senses of the physical world. We've seen it, touched it, tasted it, smelled it, or heard it. Okay? We have another class of knowledge that comes by way of memory. That's a different kind of knowledge. We all have knowledge of what I call self-knowledge. And I'll talk before the end of the evening on kinds of knowledge that don't involve the senses. But we all know which body in the room is ours. And that's not on the basis of senses. It's not as though I came in and looked around and said, well, this one looks like mine. No. There are many thoughts going on in the room right now, aren't there? I hope. Okay. And you know of all the thoughts in the room, which thoughts are yours, don't you? You know which set of thoughts in this room are your thoughts. But you don't know that by your senses. Okay? As a matter of fact, if you didn't know which senses were yours without using them, you would never be able to use them to know other things and know that it was your knowledge. Okay? How would I know that this podium was here by way of my senses if I were not able to identify which sense experiences were mine, you see? To say it differently, I can see a podium, but I cannot see my seeing of the podium. But my seeing of the podium is every bit as real as the podium. Okay? So, there are classes of knowledge, and guess what this argument from the fact of error does? It picks a member of a class of knowledge to discredit all the members of that class. Okay? So we take the class of sensory knowledge. It will say, look, you claimed that you saw that ore and it looked bent to you, didn't it? And later on you found out by your senses that it was straight. So here, in order to discredit all sensory knowledge because of mistakes in sensory knowledge, an appeal is made to another member of the class. Do you see what I'm getting at here? And so the problem is that in order to refute a class of claims to know on this argument, you have to actually appeal to another member of the very class you're seeking to discredit. Again, memory. Someone can say, didn't you remember something, but you turned out that your memory was mistaken? Yes. Well, how do we know our memories are mistaken if it isn't based on other memories that aren't mistaken? And so there we use a claim from the class of memory knowledge to discredit the whole class, which rests on the veridicality and our knowledge, and certainly even our knowledge of another member of the class. Now, there's another argument from error that's a little bit more important for ministry and for the intellectual life. And this one is one that, unfortunately, René Descartes, who hated skepticism, when he offered the cure that killed the patient. Bless his heart. His way of trying to get rid of skepticism played into the skeptic's hands. And here was Descartes' argument for skepticism that he sought to refute. The argument is from the mere possibility of error. Just from the mere possibility of error. So the idea goes like this. Look, isn't it possible right now that you're dreaming? Or isn't it possible that there really is no external world outside of you, but you are having sense experiences right now, either by an evil demon producing them in you, or if you want, God's just having fun with you for a while here. But there really is no external world, and God's merely producing sensations of chairs and tables in your mind, but there are no chairs around you. Isn't that just possible? Isn't it possible that your senses right now are deluding you in some way? Now, note very carefully. The claim is not, isn't it likely, or isn't it plausible to think that your senses are deceiving you? The claim is, isn't it just possible that your senses are deceiving you? And I think the answer is, well, yeah, it's possible. Well, if it's possible that you're mistaken, how can you know you're not mistaken? Isn't it possible that you're wrong about God, or you're wrong about such and such? Yeah, in most cases. Well, then how do you know you're not? So you see, this is an argument that seeks to generate enough doubt to remove our claim to know something from the mere possibility that we're wrong. The mere possibility. So let's back up now, and let's try to develop a response to this that not only will give us something to say to the skeptic, but that will shed light on the intellectual life. I want to begin. Roman numeral 1 was types of skepticism. I talked about iterative. I talked about differences in depth and then differences in breadth. I've given a couple of arguments for skepticism. One from the fact of error, and the other from just the mere possibility of error. What I want to do now is I want to begin to develop a response by talking about Roman numeral 3, something called the problem of the criterion. The problem of the criterion. Suppose that I asked you to sort apples up here. I had a basket of apples, and I said, I want you to sort these, and I want you to put the good apples over here in that basket and the bad apples over there. How would you go about sorting those apples? What would you do? Say it. Go ahead. Okay, pick them up and look at them. What would you be looking for? Okay. So would you put the ones with the blemishes in the bad barrel and the ones with, okay? Any other thoughts on that?
How many blemishes make a bad apple?
So you might be willing to put an apple with maybe one blemish if it wasn't too bad in the good apple, but one with, say, some number or other in the, okay?
What about the color?
Talk to me about the color.
Well, one's, let's say it's purplish, like it's spotty. It's not a green, bright green.
Okay, so where would you put those?
Well, the purple ones is on the back.
Okay. All right. Now let me ask you a different question. I want you to engage in the same task, but only now not sort apples. I'd like you to sort furples. And I want you to put the good furples. Well, you've got to sort them. I'm not even going to say furples are the kinds of things that could go in baskets, but I want you to sort furples. How are you going to get going here? You think we got to start by defining a furple? Define a good furple. Show me the furple. Well, that's the way to start it. Actually, these are very different